What's up, fantasy managers? I want to talk about the big guys up front because they should be able to eat their cake too. The offensive line is important for your fantasy players to score points. I have the offensive line report for week 14 that you should know about. I know you're interested, so stick around for 7 seconds. This information can help you decide your own fantasy tiebreakers, who to start, who to sit. By understanding who has the advantage in the trenches will give you the advantage over your league mates. I have 3 players that you want to avoid. I have 3 players that you want to target. All this information is on PFF. I subscribe to it, so you don't have to, but I will relay the information to you, starting with my notes right now. Let's kick things off and let's get into the game right now. And the first game that we want to look into, the offensive line that we want to look into, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Tampa Bay's offensive line ranks 3rd in pass blocking grade. That's 81.1, allowing the 2nd lowest pressure rate at 17.8%. That's amazing. The Raiders' defensive line ranks 25th in pass rush grade. That's 62.3, and 29th in pressure rate at 29.5. So what this is saying right here is the Buccaneers' offensive line, they're doing great. They're protecting the quarterback. They're making sure nobody gets in his face. While the Raiders, their pass rushing grade, they just suck. They're failing in the pass rushing. I mean, besides Max Crosby, that dude is insane. But the rest of the defensive line, their pressure rate is 29.5%. That sucks. They cannot get to the opposing quarterback. So that person that's going to benefit for this game is Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield is having another great year. We thought maybe this year he might have a downfall just because David Canales is gone. But no, he is still playing great. His fantasy points per dropback, he's 10th best in the league. His pressure completion percentage is number 2 overall. His play action completion percentage is number 1 overall. His red zone completion percentage is 1 overall. And his clean pocket, when he is given a clean pocket, like we were just talking about how his offensive line is great at protecting him, he is 6 overall. His clean pocket completion percentage is 71.2%. That is amazing. This is why we're targeting this guy. But I know he's had a down week. We're so used to this guy scoring 20 point games. The last week, he scored 18 and below. That's not the Baker Mayfield will know. Well, this is an opportunity for him to get a bounce back because of the clean pocket that he's going to have. And after a down week in week 13, Mayfield has a good shot to bounce back in week 14 against the Raiders, who are allowing the 8th most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position this season. When also considering the advantage in the trenches, Mayfield should be able to thrive as no quarterback with a minimum of 200 dropbacks has thrown a higher percentage of yards from the clean pocket, 86.8%, than Mayfield this season. Mayfield has also thrown 25 touchdown passes on the year. That is 3rd most. And an incredible high 96% of those touchdown passes have come from a clean pocket, a mark that leads the league. So he's leading the league in that statistic too. So this is saying he's going to have a clean pocket. He's going to have a chance to throw more touchdowns. His accuracy is going to be amazing. He's got Mike Evans back. He's got pass catching running backs. He's got Cade Otton. This should be a bounce back game for him, so you should be able to feel comfortable. Put him into your lineup. I mean, this is the bipocalypse. This is the second one of the season. If you have him, you should be able to start him and feel comfortable for him to light up your fantasy week this week, in week 14. And the second game we're going to look into is the Miami Dolphins versus the New York Jets. We are targeting the Miami Dolphins line against the New York Jets for this game. The Dolphins offensive line has allowed just a 20.1% pressure rate. That's 3rd best this season. While the Jets defensive line owns just a 66.6. Oh, I don't like that number. I hate that number. Pass rush grade of 16th overall. So that's kind of in the middle of the gap. Well, PFF is saying the Dolphins offensive line is 3rd best in pressure rate, while the Jets defense is 17th. That's a large enough gap to make a difference in this game. And one person that's going to make a difference too is Tua. Tua is actually number 1 in completion percentage in a clean pocket. And he's also number 1 in completion percentage under pressure, which is insane. The person he's thrown to in a clean pocket or while getting pressured is Jonnu Smith, and that's the player that's going to impact for this game. And I love this for 2 reasons. 1, Jonnu Smith is on my team, so I want him to do well. And number 2, this is my play of the week for tight ends. Jonnu Smith has been killing it. The last 3 weeks, he's been tight end 2 on the week. Tight end 2, tight end 2, tight end 2. The last 3 games, he has led the Dolphins a target share. I love that when it's coming from your tight end. He's actually 23rd in ADOT, so he stays close to the line of scrimmage. That's why he's able to get those easy passes, those screen passes, and he is 2nd in yards after catch for tight ends, so that's amazing. He is getting you the catches, which is the point. He's getting you the yards, which is the point. PFF is saying to start him again. Smith has emerged as one of the league's most productive tight ends this season, though that production is even greater in this week's game. On non-pressured dropbacks, Smith is seeing a very strong 26.4% target rate, which ranks 7th among 42 qualifying tight ends and leads all Dolphins wide receivers as well. Tua Tagovailoa is kept clean. Smith has generated a .52 fantasy points per route run in those situations, which ranks 6th among qualifying tight ends and also leads the Dolphins. Smith should be in a great spot to finish a high-end tight end option for fantasy week once again. So this is basically saying what I say earlier. Tua, he's number 1 in completion percentage and a clean pocket. They're saying he's going to have another game full of clean pockets, and who's his favorite player that he likes to throw to? Jonnu Smith. So you should be able to put him in your lineup, and he's going to light up your fantasy points again this week. And the third and final game that we're going to look into for the offensive line we want to target is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Chicago Bears. We are targeting the San Francisco 49ers offensive line. The 49ers offensive line has generated a 1.7 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's the third best mark in the league. The Bears defensive line has allowed 1.4 rushing yards before contact per attempt, which ranks 24th this season. So you know where we're going with this. You know who we're going to try to target. Christian McCaffrey? No, that dude's a bust. Destroy him. Jordan Mason? That dude just hit IR. IR means I regret drafting him. We're going after the rookie, Isaac Guerendo. I tell you what, I like this. I like when I read this because this player is also my play of the week for running backs. I mean, why not? He was a waiver pickup of week 14, the main guy that everyone was trying to go after. And now he's behind the offensive line that earns a 1.7 rushing yards before contact. And this is the fastest running back from the combine. This is going to be great. This was too easy. Of course I was going to pick this guy. And look at the matchup against the Bears. The Bears have been allowing a lot of rushing, a lot of great scoring from their opposing running backs. Chicago Bears in the last 3 weeks have allowed 23 points, 21 points, 15 points to David Montgomery, and in the same game, they allowed 12 points to Jahmyr Gibbs. Of course, I'm going to say play Isaac Guerendo, and I'm glad PFF agrees with me. This gives me more confidence. With Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason landing on injured reserve, Guerendo is in a great position to take over the lead back duties this week in a favorable matchup. When provided at least 1 rushing yard before contact, Guerendo averages 9.0 yards per carry, which leads all running back with at least 20 carries in those same situations. For teams who have recently acquired Guerendo off of waivers, because he was the waiver pickup for this week, he should immediately be in position to start and return some fantasy value in a week where there are 6 teams on bye. The Bears are allowing the 10th most fantasy points per game to running backs this season. The Bears are giving up 24 points to running backs. They've given up 10 rushing touchdowns this year. They're allowing the 4th most rushing yards on the season combined. How do you not want to start Isaac Guerendo this week? This is a perfect matchup for him to put into your lineup and light up the points for you for this week. If you made it this far and if you're enjoying the information I'm giving you about the offensive line report for week 14, then please hit the subscribe and press the like. It goes a long way. We have a goal to get 1,500. We reached it. Now we're going to try to get to 2,000. That's our new goal. We can't do it without you guys. Anything and everything goes a long way. We appreciate you zoners. Thank you for watching. Okay, first we went after the players that we want to put in your lineup to light up your fantasy score. Now we're going to talk about the players that we want to ice out from your lineup that we want to try to avoid. And the first game we're going to look into is the Cleveland Browns versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are looking at the Cleveland Browns offensive line. The Browns offensive line owns just a 55.9 pass blocking grade on the year. That's 29th. And has the 5th highest pressure rate at 30.5%. The Steelers defensive line owns the highest pass rush grade of 90.7 this season, and oh yeah, you know they have TJ Watt too. And this is crazy because the Browns are usually known for how good their offensive line is in general for pass blocking and run blocking. I mean, now they have Jameis Winston back there throwing the ball, so you think they would have a great pass blocking, but they don't. They actually have one of the worst. They give up one of the most pressure rates in the NFL, and now you got TJ Watt. He actually is in top 5 from getting to the quarterback on a pressure rate, so this is not going to look good for the guy who just finished in the top 5 in quarterback last week, Jameis Winston. And Jameis Winston is by far one of the craziest fantasy football players of all time. Because when you go and look at his stats, there's really nothing really good about it, but there's times that you want to play him because he's going to score you 30 or 40 points because he loves throwing the ball. He likes to huck him, tuck him, suck him. And since we're talking about him getting pressured, his completion percentage while under pressure is 48.1%. That's 31st overall. His play action completion percentage is 32 overall. His red zone completion percentage is 31st overall, and his clean pocket completion percentage is 31 overall. They're not great. This is not a good stat line, but the fact is that his pressure completion percentage, because it's 31st overall, because they're going to be allowing a lot of pressure from the Pittsburgh Steelers, that he's not going to complete a lot of passes. That is what PFF is saying. After a near 500-yard pass a game and finishing as the overall quarterback 1 for the week in standard scoring, Winston stands out as a potential letdown candidate for those adding him off waivers and plugging him in during this week with everybody on the bye. But when pressured this season, Winston has thrown just 18.2% of his total touchdown passes, which ranks 29th overall among 34 qualifying quarterbacks. Winston also ranks 29th among the same qualifying quarterbacks, and that just 17% of his total completions have come from when under pressure. His overall 44.4% completion rate when pressured ranks for 30th among 41 qualifying quarterbacks. The Steelers are also allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this season. He actually went up against a good defense last week in Denver, and he put up one hell of a game. He did have 3 interceptions, but he still, ended up as quarterback 1 overall. But now this is a division game, right? Now he's playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers are the best team against quarterbacks. So I know there's a lot of buys this week. PFF is saying when this guy's under pressure, he just sucks. He blows it. You don't want to put this guy in your lineup this week. You want to try to ice him out. So ice out Jameis Winston from your lineups. Now let's look into the next game's offensive line that we want to focus on, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. We are focusing on the Chargers offensive line. Again, last week it was for a positive. This week is for a negative. The Chargers offensive line ranks middle of the pack in pass blocking grade at 70.5 this season. The Chiefs defensive line ranks 5th in pass rush grade at 76.2 and are generating a 27.9 quick pressure rate, which is the 3rd best mark in the league. Hello, Chris Jones, dude. Chris Jones is destroying it again. I think he actually leads the league in the most pressured quarterback plays this season. But anyway, so this was the same thing for last week when we had the Chargers offensive line going against the Atlanta Falcons defensive line. Justin Herbert was expected to have a good game, but that didn't work out. Their offensive line actually got him sacked 5 times and 4 times the week before that. So in the last 2 games, he's been sacked 9 times. His offensive line has let him down. But there's one guy that they're saying to avoid that you definitely want to ice out of your fantasy lineup. I'm all for it. I don't care much for this guy. You can't predict this guy when he's going to do good, when he's going to do bad. This week they're saying he's going to do bad, so you want to ice out Quentin Johnson. And even before this guy forgot how to catch the ball, he wasn't playing great. He was playing good. When he scored a touchdown, he would get those long touchdowns, and that was about it. He's Mr. Touchdown dependent. When I look at his stats, he's 69th in targets. He's 65th in target share. His route participation, he's 63rd. Air yards, 52. And this guy's supposed to be the deep threat, and he's 52nd in air yards. His yards per route run, he's 1.63. That's 59th overall. So this guy, you're only putting him in when it's a great matchup like the last 2 weeks, and he still haven't been able to do anything. And now he's got a bad matchup. You're only going to get a couple of catches, and you're hoping that he's going to get a long touchdown. If he doesn't get a long touchdown, he's going to ruin your week. Johnson had weeks where he's been fantasy relevant, and while the Chargers passing offense should be expected to bounce back after a couple down performances these past 2 weeks, Johnston could still find himself at the odd man out. It's possible that Ladd McConkey could miss this game as he deals with an injury that took him out of the team's Week 13 game, which would help Johnson's value, but for now, he doesn't project strongly in this matchup. On pressured dropbacks this season, Johnson is seeing just a 4.7% target rate, which ranks 155th out of 157 qualifying wide receivers and tight ends. This is a big difference from his 26.8% target rate on non-pressured dropbacks. Both McConkey, 21%, and Will Dissly, 19.2%, rank among that short cohort of pressured dropbacks. As a result, Johnson ranks just 88th in fantasy points per route run on pressured dropbacks and should be avoided this week. And the third and final game that we want to look at so we can find a player to ice out of your lineups is the New York Jets offensive line versus the Miami Dolphins defensive line. The Jets offensive line is generating just a 0.9 rushing yards before contact per attempt, which ranks 30th this season. Miami's defensive line is allowing just 0.5 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's the best mark on the league. So we already kind of know where this is going. It's going to be Breece Hall. Breece Hall, there was a thing that came out saying that he's going to be doubtful and might not even play in this upcoming game. So I'm just going to read this in general, but Braylon Allen, he's the next guy up, and this is already saying here, they only allow 0.5 rushing yards before contact on Miami's defensive line. That is bad for any running back. So I'm going to still read this, and maybe we could just kind of replace Braylon Allen. I don't know if you still want to play Braylon Allen, but for sure, we're going to try to ice out Breece Hall if he plays. And when Breece Hall is contacted 2 or fewer yards from the line of scrimmage, Hall averages just 2.5 yards per carry, which ranks 33rd among 51 qualifying quarterbacks. Holy shit! This guy was a top 5 draft pick. Oh my God, he's such a bust this year. Hall's 52.0 rushing grade in those situations also ranks just 39th among the same 51 running backs. Hall is dealing with an injury, causing him to cede some snaps and playing time to Isaiah Davis as well as Braylon Allen this past week. Considering the Jets' current record and the trajectory of their season, it wouldn't be surprising to see them rely less on Hall and allow his backups to provide some relief. Combined with the poor matchup where the Jets running backs ranked 20th of 26 teams this week, according to PFF's strength of schedule tool, Hall should not be considered a top running back option for this week. So, like I said, if he plays, ice him out. If you're thinking like maybe we should start Braylon Allen, from what I'm reading here, for how good the Dolphins' offensive line is, like PFF says, they're only allowing a 0.5 rushing yards before contact. That is not good for any running back. Any running back. Not mentioning the Jets are just a dumpster fire anyways. It's hard to want to play anybody from that team besides Devontae Adams and maybe, Garrett Wilson on some games. But still, maybe even that. This is not a team that you actually want to have players playing. So it's a tough matchup even if you play Braylon Allen. All right, now I want to get into my quick hits where I go after some games that we think that we should be a part of or try to be a part of or try to stay away. And the first game I want to go into is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Atlanta Falcons. So the Minnesota Vikings, they only allow a pressure 27% of the time, which is a little bit above average, but it's only turned into sacks 14% of the time, so that's pretty good. The Atlanta Falcons only get to the quarterback pressure the quarterback 27% of the time, and that is below average, and their sack conversion rate is 13%, and that is below average. So right now, PFF is giving Minnesota Vikings a 42% advantage in the passing game. So Sam Darnold, he's actually number one in deep ball completion. So what I'm seeing here is that if the Atlanta play how they're supposed to play and suck at pressuring the quarterback, Sam Darnold's going to get time in that pocket. He's going to let the play develop, and that's going to benefit Justin Jefferson, Addison, maybe TJ Hawkinson. So right now, if you got any of those Viking players, I think this will be a good matchup for him. Sam Darnold's actually Tyler's play of the week for quarterbacks. Now, the second game I want to look into is with the running game. It's going to be the Los Angeles Rams versus the Buffalo Bills. So the Los Angeles Rams, they're earning a 1.46 yards per carry. That's actually pretty good. That's got to be one of the tops in the league, like top 10. The Buffalo Bills defense line, they're actually allowing 1.45 yards before contact, and that's pretty bad. That's bad. So you can run on the Bills. The Rams have had 19 runs inside the 5-yard line, which was converted into touchdowns 47% of the time, while the Bills have allowed 19 runs inside the 5-yard line, and it's only going to be converted to touchdowns 11% of the time. So when they actually get to the goal line, they're a little bit better. It looks like here you're at least going to get a lot of yards. And I mean, who we got here? We got Kyren Williams. We know Kyren Williams is a baller. He's one of the elite running backs. He's got to score some touchdowns, though. It looks like he might have a difficult time when he gets into the goal line opportunities, but it looks like he's going to have a lot of chances to get a lot of yards. It is hard to throw against the Bills, so they might focus on the run a lot here. And while the Bills are allowing, like I said, 1.45 yards before contact, that's great for running backs. This should be a good matchup for Kyren Williams. Now, if we're going to talk about games that we want to be a part of, let's talk about games that we don't want to be a part of, that we want to stay away from. The first game I'm looking at here is the New York Giants offensive line versus the Saints defensive line. Now, here, the New York Giants, they are allowing a pressure rate of 32%. By God, that is one of the highest pressure rates for an offensive line in this league. And it's converted to sacks 16% of the time. That's about average. And the New Orleans Saints, they only get to the quarterback, 28% of the time. That's a little bit, that's not elite numbers, but it's a little bit above average. But it's looking here, it's saying here that the Giants, because they give up so much pressure rate, that this is actually going to put them at a disadvantage. And PFF is saying a negative 20% in the passing game, a disadvantage in the passing game for the Giants. So, of course, I mean, they got backup quarterbacks playing. The one thing that we are going to maybe want to avoid is Malik Neighbors. If he plays, I know he got injured, and they're getting an MRI, so we're going to see how that turns out. But with other wide receivers like Darius Slayton or Wan'Dale Robinson, they both got kind of bad matchups this week. Darius Slayton's going up against Kool-Aid. They allow 0.28 fantasy points per route run, and Wan'Dale Robinson, he's going up against Ugo, they go. He's allowing just 0.25 fantasy points per route run. So Malik Neighbors actually had the better matchup this week, but if he may not even play, and besides, like I said, it's backup quarterbacks, and they're going to be giving up a lot of pressure to the Saints. So this could be one of those games that you want to try to avoid, in the passing game at least. And then the final game I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about the running game, and it's the Seattle offensive line versus the Cardinals defensive line. Seattle's only earning a 0.91 yards before contact. Holy shit, that's so bad. That is the worst. That is one of the worst. That's tied with Tennessee for one of the worst in the league. And you're going up against Arizona that allow 1.21 yards before route run. I mean, it's average, but when yours is so bad, I mean, this is just going to be a bad matchup. Seattle, when they've run the ball 21 times inside the 5-yard line, converted into touchdowns 33% of the time. That's not good. The Cardinals on the defensive end, they've only allowed 9 runs inside the 5-yard line, and that's been converted into touchdowns 33% of the time. I think so. If my math is math, then that's only 3 touchdowns inside the 5-yard lines this year. So this is not going to be a good matchup for the running game. Arizona Cardinals defense has actually been improving week by week. Kenneth Walker, that's a guy you probably want to stay away from. He's actually Tyler's pause for the week when it comes to running backs, but he might not even play. So Zach Charbonnet, maybe you're going to hope that he gets a lot of opportunities, like catching the ball out of the backfield, but that might be a guy that you want to stay away from too. It's also a division game. Last time the game was 16-6. It wasn't high scoring. So if I could, I will try to stay away from the running backs from the Seattle game. That's a wrap for the offensive line report for Week 13. Now you know which 3 players to avoid. Now you know which 3 players to target. Plus, you have some additional games you want to be a part of or stay away. Every Friday night, Tyler and I do a live breaking show and answer questions from the chat. If you want to know where your players landed in our rankings, if they were high, if they were low, click this video right here. I'll talk to you in that video. Deuces.